Good evening. I hope you have been enjoying the dinner and also have been enjoying the wonderful photographs of Jean there, where you see him not aging much, I must say, and being quite adventurous even in a small airplane. So apart from the wonderful mathematical expositions that we will have these 2 days, and thanks to the speakers of the great lectures this afternoon. These 2 days we also have some time for share some memories and some stories. I think we do that both tomorrow afternoon and tonight. I think tonight we get a little bit the perspective from the inside, from some of the Institute faculty. And my role is here just to introduce the MC of the evening, which is Helmut Hofer, professor of the School of Mathematics. Helmut, the word is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so I'm Helmut Hofer, I'm DEO, so before, not to stretch your imagination, so that's sort of something like the chair of mathematics. And you might not have known that Jean Bourgain was in some sense or that was his plan to be the eternal chair of of mathematics. So he really loved this job, and everybody else was really happy that he did so. Now, so of course the happiness of Jean in this arrangement needs some further investigation. So usually everybody is highly suspicious, who wants to be chair, as I think most of you know. And Jean didn't even have an agenda other than doing mathematics. So the question is why? Now, I will continue my talk, and you can think about it, and we return to this topic later. So, as I was told, when Bob McPherson came here, he was actually quite impressed by Jean, because they were the only two members of a very elite club here. That is at least what Bob thought. Namely, there were the 3 a.m. readers in the periodical room of the IIS library. So when Bob arrived at the IIS, he commented that he was delighted to be at an institution who had a night owl who was later than he was usually, and sometimes, even when he returned at 2 o'clock, it just happens that Jean came to work. So now you might now get the impression that the only 2 guys who actually worked here were Bob and Jean. So in order to take that fantasy away, let me at least explain that myself and my collaborators actually never ran into them, but we usually went at 2 a.m. in the morning to the Wawa store, which I think a lot of people know, and I have some witnesses. Usually I ran in Nima Akani Hamed, who also showed up with collaborators at the same time. Now, as they all say, this Wawa store is in continuous operation since the American Revolution, with the exception of 5 days when we had Hurricane Sandy. And that leads me to another story involving Jean. So when Sandy hit, we were a declared disaster area. All the electricity went down. But I think cell phones work, maybe phones work in general still, they're on a different grid. So Jean, of course, was very protective of his time, so he called up local hotels in order to check in. So he called up the Marriott Hotel, first question, do you have electricity? So they said yes, so he booked the hotel for a while. And then it turned out that the definition of do you have electricity depends, I guess. So there wasn't a very precise definition. So it turned out that they were also off the grid, but they had a backup generator. So only in the hallways you had electricity. So for the next 5 days, actually, he was sitting in the hallways and doing mathematics. And according to him, he actually proved a nice theorem. So coming to the big question, why did he want to be chair? Particularly since he obviously shares his research time so much. So there are 3 reasons why he loved to be chairman. So the main reason was he could schedule the school meetings around his travel plans, which I think was the main reason. Secondly, since everybody else was convinced that being chair was a hard job, he didn't have any other job to do. And thirdly, it didn't matter at all, since Mary Jane Hayes was running the whole operation. And I'm very happy that Mary Jane Hayes is here. And I think most of you know, and Ellie Gustafsson, his secretary. And I think you guys presumably ran the whole, well, I mean, conjecturally. There was a brain of the whole operation here. So let me finish my part by reciting a poem by Anonymous, which is also posted on our webpage. Okay, so presumably I'm not as good as I should be about this, but I give it my best shot here. Who makes a paper every week, and every month a new technique, and founds new branches every year, and doesn't know the sense of fear? And legends, whom do you hear about? And if you meet him, you be proud. Of course, he made his early traces in the romantic Banach spaces, and he obtained his glory there, and after that went everywhere. And everybody is excited and says he almost always cited. You read a paper and again you see the name of Jean Bourgain. Okay, so this was a startup, and now come to the more serious contributions. So the first speaker is Enrico.
Okay. I met Jean Bourgain the first time in Sweden. And Leonard Carlson had told me he is going to be the greatest star. And I was a bit intimidated, so I didn't talk too much with him at the time. But I came across some of his papers, and which on topics which were of interest to me, and I realized how good he was. I mean, he did things I could never imagine, even the problems or the solutions. He was a bit of a problem solver, perhaps, but the best in the past 150 years, maybe only after Euler. And with the years, his knowledge of mathematics expanded and expanded. And I characterize him as the only modern mathematician of the modern era that distinguishes between the sign equal and the sign greater or smaller. Today, a lot of mathematics is based on the equality sign. This mathematics was just the opposite. And, well, eventually, I was very pleased when he came to the Institute. And I know for him it was not necessarily a very easy decision, but I was extremely pleased, and even more so when I found out that he was on the same floor. And I used to work late at night, and of course he worked much later than me. But after 8 or 9 o'clock, sometimes he will knock on my door and maybe ask a little question about some little inequality or something. And bit by bit, we started measuring each other. And then we started even a collaboration. He was not a mathematician with a big plan, enormous new theory to develop during a lifetime. Some people said he was a problem solver, but in solving problems, he invented new questions, opened new directions, and all the subjects in which he worked made tremendous advances. And we started working together, and eventually we wrote the first joint paper. And it was very interesting to see. I will contribute some fairly standard number theory, and he contributed all the deep ideas. And it was amazing. And we became close friends. So at the time I was living by myself, and so I was pretty free, staying late at night. And at some moment, it was 8 in the evening, and so I knocked on his door and said, "Well, have you eaten anything?" He said, "No. Will you like to come to my place and then fix something?" And so we started doing that, not on a regular basis, but the result was at times he would come to my place and we work until 5 o'clock in the morning. And then I realized that when he also was by himself, he always worked until 5 o'clock in the morning. And his mathematics spanned, everything. Geometry, and number theory, and classical, and the number theory involving geometry over finite fields, for example, in which at the beginning I had a little more knowledge, and so it will come to me to clarify some things. And then he started new directions, even there. And his imagination was incredible. And the thing is hard to understand, but on the same day, he could work on the most complicated partial differential equations and then switch to the geometry of convex sets in high-dimensional spaces. And he was incredible, absolutely incredible. And he was a very good friend and very generous, extremely generous with everyone who was not intimidated by him. Well, everybody was intimidated, of course, but not scared. So after a while, he realized that instead he was very generous, very, unique person. He has changed a lot of way in the fields of analysis, in the geometry, in convex geometry, and I'm not talking about algebraic geometry, but the algebraic geometry, the geometry do with the sign equal, and instead the geometry of sets. He could imagine sets in high dimension, which to me is incomprehensible. When I go to 3 dimensions, that's about it. And we have lost a great mathematician and a friend. We ended up also writing several papers together. And sometimes he'll say, "Oh, why don't you, what are you doing?" I say, "Well, I'm thinking about this." "Oh, I think you can make something better." And suddenly this will become a joint paper. And sometimes, here is a little story. Once I received, in reading the new issues in a journal, there was a paper on power series in 1 variables and majorants and things like that. And the guy proved some theorems, and then I looked, "Oh, wait a moment, I did all this when I was 17 years old." and publish the paper. So I wrote a letter to the guy explaining, well, I know that the paper in the bulletin of the Argentina Mathematical Society is not really knowledge for everyone. But, and then I had a little I told this story to Bourgain. Bourgain said, oh, but wait a moment, maybe one can do a little bit more. And we ended up working on this very marginal question for about 3 months. And eventually, there was, again, a paper which was not too bad. I mean, it's even on a very marginal subject. I mean, it worked mathematics, first of all, with extremely good taste in choosing what to do. And when the subject was exhausted, he would put it aside for a while, waiting for maybe new ideas and a little more thinking. And he never asked himself, is that important? That question never came to his mind. That's when sometimes with the new members, they come and say, well, why don't you think about this problem? And they tell me, is it important? Means, I want to write some papers to publish, and then this way I can get a good job. But it was never like that. And I saw his evolution from convex geometry, where he did fantastic results, then combinatorics and number theory, and analysis, of course, and putting everything together. His work was absolutely unique, and he was a very close friend, and we are all sorry that he has left us.
Thank you, Enrico. And I think that's the appropriate moment, so let's drink on our memories of Jean. I think everybody has different memories, and I think all the memories, at least for me, and I think for you, are unforgettable. And so, cheers on Jean.